going on, guys? My name is Zed and welcome to this video. This is last week I watched number 14. So the very first movie I watched this week was Scoob, and I already had a big ranting review of it on the channel, so if you want to go check that out, I'll put a link in the description, or you can just go on the channel. I mean, it should be one of the first videos. But basically, in a very small summary, I thought it was poorly directed. I thought that it was dated references. I don't think the cast had good chemistry. And overall, it just did not feel like Scooby-Doo. So Scoob, I would give 2 out of 5 stars. And then after watching the travesty that is Scoob, I went on and I watched Trolls World Tour, which is the follow-up, the sequel to the 2016 movie Trolls, which was a big surprise. I didn't think that they would be able to, they being DreamWorks, would be able to come up with a concept for a toy line that was so successful and worked so well. And I really enjoyed Trolls World Tour. It was a good look into culture and diversity and celebrating one's differences through music. And for that, I think there's a lot of good life lessons, a lot of good lessons for kids about, you know, not judging a book by its cover. The music is catchy, the animation is awesome. I love this movie. Almost feels like it's a stop motion movie. Like, there's the 3D animation elements with the trolls, but there's so much like photorealistic, or it's so well textured. It looks like a tangible object. And I really like that look for this movie. So overall, I would give Trolls World Tour 3.5 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyable. You know, something that I needed that day. I needed a bit of a pick-me-up after watching Scoob. Somebody just watched Bloodshot. Alright, so when it comes to the Valiant comic universe, I know next to nothing. I have the most exposure to Bloodshot, basically just because I am a fan of Jason David Frank. So when he was preparing to play him in this like web series, I was up to date on his social media, but that's about as far as I go with Variant Comics. Let's start off with the things I like about this movie. Isa Gonzalez and Lamorne Morris, I like those two actors, and I like their characters within the movie. Lamorne Morris basically played Don Cheadle's character from Ocean's 11. I mean, it was pretty similar. But and then I also, with a budget of $45 million, what they were able to accomplish with their action sequences and their CGI was pretty fucking incredible. Instead of having like super fast shaky cam where you can't tell what the fuck's happening, they insisted on doing so much slow motion that it almost like negated the cool action sequence, because it's like, oh, it's like boom, 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 but in the movie it's just like this movie looked really, really good, but where it falls flat is basically everywhere else. Character development and storytelling, very cliche. It didn't bring anything new to the table. It was just kind of reused bits from every other action movie. There's a guy who is seeking revenge, and the people who he thinks are helping him are actually against him, and they're actually controlling him without him knowing, and it's basically RoboCop. And you know, and what's the other movie where they wipe his mind? Oh, and The Winter Soldier. It's basically that kind of, it's the two of them together, RoboCop and The Winter Soldier. Put them together, you have Bloodshot the movie. I somewhat enjoyed it. Like I said, the visuals were enough for me to keep me stimulated throughout the movie. But one after another was just another action trope. The writing was very generic, very cliche, clunky. They tried to make fun of it throughout, talking about, you know, the designer that worked for RST. I believe that's what the company was called. The guy who was the computer hacker guy. You know, his boss was like, I'm not taking any more of your ideas. You know, you've already stolen ideas from every other action movie ever. And then Lamorne Morris's character said, you know, a couple times, you know, this feels like a superhero movie. Like, you know, oh, this can't be happening. Like, sunset at the end. Like, this has to be a superhero movie. Like they kind of tried to poke fun at it, but at the end of the day, instead of poking fun of how generic your movie is, try to do something different. Overall, Bloodshot was just, eh. Will I watch it again? I don't know. But I definitely didn't feel like I wasted my time. I was just, you know, it was a good time filler, I suppose. Bloodshot, average movie, average superhero movie. Probably will not be getting a sequel anytime soon because I believe it well underperformed because it kind of came out at the beginning of the year when all this stuff started going down. So, I might have spoke too soon. Bloodshot, 2.5 out of 5 stars, 3 stars. You'll see what I decide here, but So this afternoon I watched Capone, a movie that I was looking forward for. I watched the trailer a couple months back and I was like, this should be interesting. From director Josh Trank, who directed the amazing movie Chronicle, probably one of my favorite found footage films, if not my favorite. And he also, I think Josh Trank has the ability to be a competent director. I just think that he took on a challenge that I don't think anybody else would have taken on, which is you have this almost mythological figure. Somebody who spawned an entire genre of his own, of these mobster movies. And you made a film about his most unflattering time in his life, where he is drooling, shitting himself, having strokes, doesn't have any memory. He's nothing. He's a shell of a man. That's very hard to do. Not impossible, very hard to do. When you have somebody like Al Capone, where you have this mental image of him and his lifestyle and all the things he did, and when you watch this movie and you realize that the end of his life was pretty fucking sad. It was something different. I applaud the director, Josh Trank, who wrote and directed this movie, for trying to almost show you that gods can also fall. But when you have a character who does have dementia, which runs in my family, so I've been around people that have, you know, gone through it, and it's extremely difficult to watch and to be a bystander for. He goes into his own worlds. You know, he's always like imagining scenarios and seeing people, hearing things, whatever. There's so many elements that the director wanted to fit in to the last year of Al Capone's life. Now, there are some things that are obviously embellished to, you know, be bigger than they actually were, but I felt like there was so much that there was so little. I think it's a kind of like a watch it for yourself movie. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I just don't think it's a movie that many people. I don't think it's a movie that has an audience, I suppose, is the best way to explain it. I do think Tom Hardy would play a killer Penguin after watching that movie. I think that, you know, I want to see what Colin Farrell does in the Batman, but Tom Hardy could play a killer Penguin. Now, I know that review was kind of all over the place, and I probably didn't convey my thoughts very well, but Capone, 2 out of 5 stars. Again, I just don't think there's much of an audience for this sort of movie, but I do applaud the director for trying to make it. Under the sea, everything's better where it is wetter under the sea, except when you're watching Underwater, which was just okay. Underwater stars Kristen Stewart and is basically about a mining base that is located at the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of our oceans. And after an earthquake that destroys most of the base, the survivors, the surviving workers, need to reach some safe locations so they can try to get back to the surface. And I have always been extremely scared, I suppose. One of my biggest fears is open water. Oceans, deep water. I can't see. If I can't stand, if I can't see, I don't want to be there. And so, like traditional horror movies, you know, I don't really watch. But if there's a movie about deep water, yeah, that's going to scare the shit out of me, and I kind of want to watch that movie. That's what kind of gets my adrenaline pumping is water. After this whole earthquake happens, you know, all these characters have to go even deeper into the Marianas Trench to try to get to safety. And along the way, they kind of discover that there's some things lurking in the depths. There's these monsters that are hunting them, and it's fucking creepy. It really, really is, because you got to think, like, they're in these deep diving suits, and all they have is like two headlights that create this little circle in front of you. Just like it's like basically holding a flashlight, and there's these things that are darting in and out of frame. And you're like, what was that? I can't see. Was that a giant frog? I couldn't tell. Like, it's eerie, it's claustrophobic, and it really got my adrenaline pumping. I feel like one of my biggest gripes about this movie is it's actually been finished. It actually wrapped. It wrapped 3 years ago. And it's just been in post-production, and it finally came out earlier this year. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff that was just left on the cutting room floor. There are times where I'm like, there had to be a conversation. There had to be a lead up to this point. Where's the lead up? Where's the development? Like, I don't know what. I feel like fucking John Travolta from Pulp Fiction. Just like, where's the development? What happened? How did we get from here to here? But visually, it's really good. I like the CGI in the movie. I like the visual effects. It was very immersive. And then the very end, this is spoiler territory. The very end, you get to see this giant monster in the depths of the Marianas Trench. This massive, massive monster, and you're like, holy shit, that thing is it's terrifying. It's I couldn't even imagine what lies at the depths of the ocean. Like, we are so unaware at what dwells down there. And to see this massive, massive thing in this movie, I was terrified. And then something happens that flips a switch in your head, and you're like, no, they fucking didn't. No! This is not happening! And then you kind of come to terms with it. You accept what you're seeing. It's fucking Cthulhu. What? Cthulhu? Are you kidding me right meow? Some H.P. Lovecraft in this shit? That was so cool. I thought that was a really cool little touch, you know. Researching the movie afterwards, they never meant for it to become like a Cthulhu type movie, but it just kind of went in that direction. So they did it, and I thought it was a pretty cool reveal. And yeah, it made me like the movie that much better. I think that the movie it's really good in its last like half hour. That's where tensions are high. You're at the deepest of the deep. You know, these characters are trying to survive. There's all these different creatures and things happening, and you're just like, what the fuck am I looking at? So, Underwater, it falls flat in some areas, but when it picks up, it really picks up. 3.5 out of 5 stars. So I watched Cats. This review should be pretty straightforward. Cats is fucking horrible. But it's also one of the greatest movies I have ever seen. It's like watching a car wreck. It's so terrible, but yet you can't take your eyes off of it. Every second of this movie is just, what the fuck? Now, I'm not familiar with the source material, but I don't think I want to familiarize myself with it. I think I got enough of Cats in this one viewing to last me a lifetime. I've heard from a lot of people that watching Cats in the theater was one of the greatest experiences they've ever had because it was the best comedy they've ever seen. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Cats isn't a comedy. Now, I swear to you, if you watch Cats, you will have a good time. You will be lost in a world unlike you've never seen before. Not in the Twilight Zone, not in Black Mirror, not in anything. This is a totally different thing. A totally different genre of movie. It's pretty fucking incredible. Cats. 1 out of 5 stars. Now, I am a big fan of the first Zombieland movie, and when I heard that they were making a sequel 10 years later, I was so goddamn excited. The whole original cast is back, and this time around, it's just as fun. I really, really enjoyed this one. I had plenty of laughs, plenty of nostalgia, and introduced a bunch of new characters that were also really, really great. There were so many amazing scenes, a lot of really great settings and places they went, like the White House or an Elvis cafe. It just overall was just exciting. It was so much fun. It's still a great zombie flick, great zombie series. I just love Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson as Tallahassee is just so incredible. I can't get over him. But I mean, all of the original cast are so great. Their chemistry is awesome. Their back and forth is priceless. So, Zombieland 2, 4 out of 5 stars. I'm so glad that they made the sequel, and I have my fingers crossed for a third one. So first up, we have The Hustle, which stars Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson. And I remember seeing the posters for this movie, which is the poster that you're seeing right now, and being pretty intrigued. Basically, this movie's about 2 con artists. One being Anne Hathaway's character is more of an established con artist, and Rebel Wilson's character is more of a, lower grade, just kind of getting by with her hustles, and she's trying to learn the ropes from Anne Hathaway on how to do bigger and better hustles. This movie is all right. It's just to be a comedy, and to be honest, I didn't really laugh much throughout. But what I will say is Anne Hathaway's character I really liked because she tried something daring with this movie. She mostly does these 2 accents, one being like a European, very generic, like British accent, and the other being like a German, Polish accent. She's not great at it. I applaud her for trying to do something different. And I enjoyed it throughout, and I was kind of like, you know what, this is a creative decision she made, and at least that's a bit funny. The best way I can describe this movie is I wish it was more of a hustle and less of a fumble. I gave Hustle 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's okay, short run time, so you're not wasting too much, but you know what? It's on Amazon Prime. Stream it if you have nothing else better to do. And then on Netflix, I watched The Lovebirds. Now, I didn't know anything about this movie, but the poster kind of screamed out to me. I was like, this is an interesting looking poster. And I read the synopsis and I was intrigued, so I gave it a watch. And it's a pretty generic crime thriller. This couple who is kind of on their last ropes are breaking up. and during this time they are witness to a murder. And not only are they a witness, but they suspect they might become suspects in this case because the murder weapon was their car. And during this entire movie, it's basically these two trying to hunt down the murderer, trying to clear their names. And I really enjoyed this movie for the singular fact that the two lead actors are probably the most beautiful movie couple I've ever seen. They're gorgeous. And it was just like, I was like, Kumail Nanjiani's beard. What? Like, that is a perfect beard. It's just a beautiful couple. Their chemistry was magical. And they really made this movie for me. The surrounding elements are just kind of hit and miss. You know, at least I didn't really focus on it. I'm more focused on their dynamic, their relationship, and ended up having a good time. So yeah, The Lovebirds, check it out. It's on Netflix. And then I watched Hotel Artemis. Now, back in 2018 when this movie came out, I remember watching the trailer and being like, Dave Bautista? Oh, hell yeah, I cannot wait to watch this. And I guess it just kind of went under my radar. I didn't know it came out, and I just kind of forgot about it until I was switching through Amazon Prime. And I was like, oh, Hotel Artemis, I remember that. Let's give it a watch. Now, this movie is a great concept. Basically, it's the year 2028. There are riots going on in LA, and there's these safe havens for criminals to go and seek protection and also healthcare services. And I think that's a really, really great concept. There's a lot of really great actors in this movie. Jodie Foster, Dave Bautista, Charlie Day, and Jeff Goldblum. It's a really star-studded cast. And I feel like I was hoping for a bit more with this movie. I was hoping for a bigger punch. But I ended up enjoying the concept enough to, be present throughout the runtime. I definitely liked some of the action sequences towards the end with can't remember her name right now. I feel really bad. I can't remember her name right now, but also Dave Bautista. Their action sequences at the end were really awesome. But overall, I feel like this one's a good time, and I don't think it's a waste of time. But there's definitely some open-ended promises and some things that you're like, oh, I feel like if they kind of push that plot line a bit more, push some buttons on it, it really could have been a great action flick, kind of like John Wick or something. It could have been a really surprising action hit. But yeah, Hotel Artemis, a good time, 3 out of 5 stars. So next up, I had the absolute pleasure of watching I Am Big Bird, the Caroll Spinney story. So Caroll Spinney, if you don't know, was a puppeteer. And he played the iconic roles of Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch from 1969 to 2018 when he retired during Sesame Street's 50th season. This is absolutely incredible. He was one of only a handful of original cast members and crew who stuck around through decades and decades and decades of this show. This documentary kind of talks about his life and his career and his ups and his downs and his highs and his lows throughout his career and family life, and it's absolutely incredible because he is kind of more than a man. Hearing him tell some of his most darkest stories really puts a new image in my head about Caroll Spinney, because I thought I knew him. I thought, I watched him for years and years of my life, and I thought that there's no way that the man who played Big Bird also tried to commit suicide. This documentary is not all sad, it's not all gloomy. There's plenty of bright spots in his life, and honestly the majority of it is bright moments in his life, but there are those dark times where he gets a phone call in the middle of the night. Him himself is expecting it to be about his father's passing, but then he hears, no, Jim Henson died. So unexpected. It's a great documentary. I absolutely loved it. It's kind of hard to rate somebody's life, but I'm gonna do the best I can and say I am Big Bird. I would give 4 out of 5 stars. I also want to mention one last thing, and this is where I come in because I couldn't stop burping or hiccuping during this final clip. What I was trying to say is I really love the fact that Caroll Spinney and his wife documented a majority of their lives together. And it really told the true story of Caroll Spinney, the highs and the lows, through the eyes of the actual man. All the events that were discussed were documented. They were on film. And that's one of the most brilliant parts of this documentary. Because it told the true story. And I really thought that was great. And to round off this week, I went all the way back to 2002 and watched I Spy, starring Owen Wilson and Eddie Murphy. And this one was a real treat. Now, I didn't hate this movie, but to be honest, it's a very generic early 2000s action comedy. Now, Eddie Murphy and Owen Wilson have really great chemistry, and throughout they really showed that they could work as a good comedy duo. But there's other plot lines like Owen Wilson's love interest and whether or not people in their circle are good or bad. That just kind of fell flat. A lot of the comedy is decent, but it's only really between Owen Wilson and Eddie Murphy, where when they start arguing or having some type of dispute, where some good comedy lies. Now, I think the best scene in this movie is an action sequence towards the end when Eddie Murphy and Owen Wilson are trying to escape from a car stacker structure thing, whatever this thing is right here, and they're being chased by the bad guys. When do I get to watch, a decent Eddie Murphy movie anymore? The last one that came out was Dolomite Is My Name. That one was great, but Eddie Murphy kind of just retired for a couple of years, and it's good to go back and watch him in his quote-unquote prime as a comedy action star. I don't know. But that is it for last week I watched. So thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And until next time, guys, I'll be seeing you later. Peace.